that an international health organization could just end the First Amendment in the United States.
Yes, and in fact, as much as this sounds, I know that it sounds preposterous, but
it does not sound preposterous.
The ability to do it is currently under discussion at the international level. And it's almost impossible to exaggerate how troubling what is being discussed is. In fact, I think it is fair to say that we are in the middle of a coup, that we are actually facing the elimination of our national and our personal sovereignty, and that is the purpose of what is being constructed, that it has been written in such a way that your eyes are supposed to glaze over.
That's right.
As you attempt to sort out what is under discussion. And if you do that, then come May of this year, your nation is almost certain to sign on to an agreement that in some utterly vaguely described future circumstance, a public health emergency, which the Director General of the World Health Organization has total liberty to define in any way that he sees fit. In other words, nothing prevents climate change from being declared a public health emergency that would trigger the provisions of these modifications. And in the case that some emergency or some pretense of an emergency shows up, the provisions that would kick in are beyond jaw-dropping.
So before you get into it, and I just want to thank you, by the way, for taking the time to go through this proposal, because you're absolutely right. It's impenetrable. It's designed to be, to cloak what they're saying rather than illuminate it. What's it called?
Well, the funny thing is, actually, I was looking this morning to find out what the current name is, and the names have actually been shifted slightly. Clearly a feature.
Oh, it's a shape-shifting
agreement. It is. So what I would do in order, and it's unclear to me how much that's just simply designed to confuse somebody who tries to sort it out, and how much that's designed to, for example, game the search engine technology that might allow you to track the changes, because to the extent that the name has shifted. So
smart.
I call it the World Health Organization Pandemic Preparedness Plan, right? And what is under discussion are some modifications to the global public health regulations and modifications to an existing treaty. But all of this makes it sound minor and procedural. What has been proposed are, again, the number of things included here is incredible. It's hard, even for those of us who have been focused on this, to track all of the important things under discussion and to deduce the meaning of some of the more subtle provisions. But the World Health Organization and its signatory nations will be allowed to define a public health emergency on any basis, that having declared one, they will be entitled to mandate remedies. The remedies that are named include vaccines. Gene therapy technology is literally named in the set of things that the World Health Organization is going to reserve the right to mandate, that it will be in a position to require these things of citizens, that it will be in a position to dictate our ability to travel. In other words, passports that would be predicated on one having accepted these technologies are clearly being described. It would have the ability to forbid the use of other medications. So this looks like they're preparing for a rerun where they can just simply take ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine off the table. They also have reserved the ability to dictate how these measures are discussed, that censorship is described here as well, the right to dictate that Of course, misinformation is how they're going to describe it.
Well, in fact, I want to ask you to pause and play a soundbite from Tedros, in which he alludes to this, and I want to get your assessment of it. Here it is.
We continue to see misinformation on social media and in mainstream media about the pandemic accord that countries are now negotiating. The claim that the accord will cede power to WHO is quite simply false. It's fake news. Countries will decide what the accord says, and countries alone. And countries will implement the accord in line with their own national laws. No country will cede any sovereignty to WHO. If any politician, business person, or anyone at all is confused about what the pandemic accord is and isn't, we would be more than happy to discuss it and explain it.
So he's going to be more than happy to discuss and explain the misinformation that you're
Yeah, that is
now spreading.
that is comforting. Well, on the one hand, I must say I had not seen that, and it is tremendously good news, actually. What it means is that once again, we have managed to raise awareness of something in time that there is conceivably a better outcome still available to us. So
They're spooked enough to bother to lie about it.
there's you couldn't have said it more accurately. Yes, those were clearly lies, and of course, his saying that into a camera is supposed to convince you. You know, nobody could possibly lie so directly, so there must be some truth in what he's saying, which is, of course, nonsense. And anybody who goes back through Orfila's compendium of various things that people have said into cameras over the course of COVID that they then swear they didn't say, months later, knows that these folks are very comfortable at saying totally false things into a camera. It doesn't cause them to think twice or sweat or anything. But it's great that we have managed to raise enough awareness that Tedros is actually addressing our spreading of what it actually is malinformation. You're aware of this
Distinction? No.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful.
So I'm so old that I was still stuck in the truth or falsehood binary.
Yeah.
Where what mattered was whether it was true or not.
No. The malinformation is actually exactly what you need to know about to see how antiquated that notion is, because this is actually the Department of Homeland Security actually issued a memo in which it defined three kinds of, I kid you not, terrorism: mis, dis, and malinformation. Misinformation are errors. Disinformation are intentional errors, lies, and malinformation are things that are based in truth but cause you to distrust authority.
So malinformation is what you commit when you catch them lying.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it is discussing the lies of your government is malinformation, and therefore a kind of terrorism, which I should point out, as funny as that is, and as obviously Orwellian as that is, it's also terrifying, because if you have tracked the history of the spreading tyranny from the beginning of the War on Terror, you know that terrorism is not a normal English word the way it once was. Terrorism is now a legal designation that causes all of your rights to evaporate. So at the point that the Department of Homeland Security says that you are guilty of a kind of terrorism for saying true things that cause you to distrust your government, they are also telling you something about what rights they have to silence you. They are not normal rights. So these things are all terrifying, and I do think, as much as
my jaw's open,
the COVID pandemic caused us to become aware of a lot of structures that had been built around us. Something that former NSA officer William Binney once described as the turnkey totalitarian state. The totalitarian state is erected around you, but it's not activated. And then once it's built, the key gets turned. And so we are now seeing, I believe, something that even outstrips William Binney's description, because it's the turnkey totalitarian planet, right? The World Health Organization is above the level of nations, and it is going to be in a position, if these provisions pass, to dictate to nations how they are to treat their own citizens, to override their constitutions, despite what Tedros has just told you. So that is frightening. It's not inherently about health. What I think has happened is the fact of a possible pandemic causes a loophole in the mind. It's not a loophole in our governance documents. Our Constitution doesn't describe exemptions from your rights during time of a pandemic emergency. Your rights simply are what they are, and they're not supposed to go anywhere just because there's a disease spreading. But nonetheless, people's willingness to accept the erosion of their rights because of a public health emergency has allowed this tyranny to use it as a Trojan horse.
Yes.
And I think that's also, it's something people need to become aware of, that there are a number of features of our environment that are basically, they are blind spots that we can't see past. Vaccine was one, and I know I was an enthusiast about vaccines. I still believe deeply in the elegance of vaccines as they should exist, but I'm now very alarmed at how they are produced, and I'm even more alarmed at what has been called a vaccine that doesn't meet the definition, right? That because many of us believe that vaccines were an extremely elegant, low harm, high efficacy method of preventing disease, when they called this mRNA technology a vaccine, many of us gave it more credibility than we should have. If they had called it a gene transfection technology, we would have thought, wait, what? That sounds highly novel, and it sounds dangerous, and how much do we know about the long-term implications? But because they called it a vaccine, people were much more willing to accept it. Public health functions the same way. If you think about it, public health, step back a second, your relationship with your doctor, your personal health ought to be very important to you. But there are ways in which things that happen at a population level affect your personal health, and your doctor's not in a position to do anything about it.
Right.
So somebody dumping pollution into a stream from which you're pulling fish, you might detect the harm at the population level. You might need a regulation at a population level in order to protect you. Your doctor's not in a position to give you a pill to correct it. So the idea that public health is potentially a place to improve all of our well-being is real. But once you decide that there's something above doctors relative to your health, then that can be an excuse for all manner of tyranny. Public health has been adopted. It's like the sheep's clothing that has allowed the wolf to go after our rights, because in theory it's trying to protect us from harms that we would like to be protected.
And it generates such fear, it's at such a huge scale, that it weakens people's moral immune systems.
Absolutely.
They will accept things they would never accept otherwise.
Absolutely. And as you know, and as I know, when we raised questions about what was being delivered to us under the guise of public health, we were demonized as if we had a moral defect. It wasn't even a cognitive defect where we were failing to understand the wisdom of these vaccines. It was a moral defect where we were failing to protect others who were vulnerable by questioning these things. So the idea that health is at stake in some vague, larger sense that requires us to override the natural relationship between doctors and patients is itself a coup against medicine by something else.